So, my name is Rachael Lauritzen. I am not speaking about food. Although, one of the things that I run into when I am advocating for the fiber shed is how the food system and the textile system are almost the same system, and they are dealing with basically the same issues. And so there will be quite a lot of overlap with some of the things that the other presentations have covered. And so I just wanted to put that forward to you. And I would like to start with a quick informal introduction to the notion of fibershed, the movement, and the network. Fibershed borrows the idea of a watershed, and instead of a regional water system, you have a regional textile system, where all of your labor and materials are sourced within that region, and in ways that are good for the people doing the work, as well as the ecosystem that is supporting that work, so that you may have textiles, whether it's for your personal fashion statement or other uses for those textiles. And it is a worldwide movement. There are fiber sheds across the nation, across the EU, across the world, from Ukraine to India and everywhere. So if that is something that you're interested in learning more about, please go to fibershed.org. There's a community tab, and under that, there is an affiliate directory and a map, and you can find your local fiber shed. I'm working here in Utah and some adjacent orphan areas to basically make those connections. And a lot of what we'll be talking about today is about that. And I will try to go quickly because I know this is supposed to be fast. So, zero waste closet. So one of the issues, and I'm going to have notes with this so that I can make sure I cover everything quickly. One of the issues is that the textile industry is one of the most polluting in the world. It's, according to an analysis by Business Insider, the fashion industry production makes up at least about 10% of total global carbon emissions, which equals the emissions generated by the EU as a whole, and is more than all international flights and maritime shipping combined. It's second only to the energy industry, and with global corporate models, it relies on inefficient and redundant shipping in order to meet short turnaround times for the fast fashion that are dropping at ever-increasing rates, sometimes twice a week. During production, the textile industry dries up water resources through the diversion of fresh sources and then pollutes the rivers and streams with highly toxic effluent runoff. Sorry, I can't tell how much you can hear me. You can hear me, okay. And it's coming from dyes, chemicals, and finishes, all of which causes significant harm to both the downstream ecosystems and human health in the area. And you can see some examples of that in the pictures up here. One of a classic example is that of cotton. Conventionally grown cotton uses 24% of the world's insecticides and 10% of the world's pesticides, making it one of the most chemically intensive crops in the world. And this works out to about a half a cup of chemicals per average t-shirt. Cotton is also one of the world's thirstiest crops, conventional cotton. It takes about 713 gallons of water to produce enough cotton for that same t-shirt. Forced labor is also an issue. In the United States, about 80% of our cotton is sourced from China. And most of that is sourced in forced labor camps with an ethnic minority called the Uyghurs. They are forced into these camps. It's basically slavery, again, for cotton. And so there are a lot of ecological and social impacts to our thirst for fashion. And so, meanwhile, 85% of all textiles are landfilled or incinerated every year. And while there's been a rise in clothing donations to the thrift stores, overall quality and usability is much lower, including scraps of things that will never be sold. And so the sheer volume of donations also is meaning that the thrift stores cannot cope with that volume, and most of what is donated ends up being shipped off to lower income countries who don't want it, and often it is pushed into the oceans or to the deserts and landfilled or incinerated again. And so, or not again, but it's the same cycle, just pushed a little further off, and it makes the consumer feel a little better about, I donated it, and so it's okay. And then even washing clothes. washing clothes, about 66% of the clothing that we wear collectively is synthetic, often in blends. And that releases about 500,000 tons of microplastics into the ocean every year, which is the equivalent of 50 billion plastic bottles. Exacerbating and accelerating all this impact is the fact that global fiber production has more than doubled since the year 2000 by 34 million tons since 2015 and increased from 125 million tons in 2023 to 132 million tons in 2024. So we're still going up. Recycled synthetics are only a stopgap. The recycled synthetic clothing fibers actually shed more microplastics than the virgin fiber. And the chemical recycling processes that they're getting a lot of talk right now, but they have similar issues about not really lowering their ecological impact because of other reasons. So at the same time, the average garment worn in the United States is worn about 7 times before being discarded. And so basically, the whole story is, especially since the turn of this century, we are accelerating our production, consumption, and cycling through of clothes and discarding these at ever higher rates. It is a major waste and ecological problem. So what can we do about it? In my work researching and supporting local sustainable textiles, I have concluded that there are about 3 main areas to focus on for developing and practicing solutions to our high waste textile system. The first is regenerative agriculture, which many of you are familiar with the food systems. Basically, these will help to make a space for ecological repair and slowing down this consumption. It puts the brakes on fast fashion and those short lead times. It is part of the extended producer responsibility initiatives that you're seeing around the nation. In fact, the original Fibershed is part of a coalition for the Calorie Cycle, which is the consortium that is implementing that extended producer responsibility in California. And it also helps with transparency, because when you bring textiles, if you're focusing on regenerative systems, you usually have some accountability system for that. And if you bring it locally, you have local transparency on that, where a lot of these things that are made in other countries or in export processing zones, there's little to no transparency on that. So you cannot check on those conditions, either for the growing, production, or the labor. You want to divest from synthetic fibers. And I guess I'll go through this quickly, but we talked about the problems of those. And so we want to get rid of that. And then we need to remember that clothes are an agricultural product, or they should be. And so shift those behaviors that way too. One of the issues, though, is that it's a hard sell. And addressing the social psychology and the need to express ourselves through clothing is one of the key points. One of the things that I get a lot of is people suggesting that buying more expensive clothing that's regeneratively made is somehow elitist, and it is expensive. And that only works when you do not consider either the social and ecological impacts of that production or the cost per wear, which is the cost of the item divided by the number of times you wear it. And I'll let you work that out. But basically, you want to focus on value, exclusivity, localism, and again, that social expression, which can take place in a lot of ways, including your mending. We will go on to here. So this is an example of the Fibershed soil-to-soil model. It's another circular model. I'll let you read that. But you want to develop local economic models where you're supporting local producers and every piece of that system to the consumer, and then having clothes that last a long time that you can eventually compost. And you want to invest in the local infrastructure, and that requires policy work as well as a lot of education and outreach and networking. So this is the short answer of how you can develop a zero-waste closet. You can make it last through mending by buying well-quality used items, buying quality that is intended to last, and then prioritizing the natural fibers and dyes does a lot for lowering ecotoxicity and the ability to compost. And then you're supporting all those local things. So that is the short version. And if you have any questions for me, I would be happy to take those, or if you want to connect afterward. Thank you.